this episode of Perspectives. I'm your host, Patrice Bobo-Miles, and today I have with me Montrae Kornegay. And Montrae, I want you to just take a minute and tell everybody who you are and what you do.
All right, great. How are you today, Patrice? So I am Montrae Kornegay. I wear many hats. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, a small business owner, and I'm an author. I'm here today to talk about private school and private teaching and homeschooling today and how we can have alternative education options.
I love that. So you told me you're an educator. Give me a little background in what you've done in education.
Yes. So ever since I got my alternative certificate in special education, I realized that I wasn't cut out for your uh, big classroom with a lot of students. Um, I was fortunate enough to volunteer at an organization here in Atlanta. Called Hands on Atlanta. And we were put into schools, into the urban schools, to run their tutoring programs during school and after school. So that's when I learned that I love the one-on-one aspect. And I also saw the need for that one-on-one aspect. At that time, I was able to see, students who couldn't read or who had never taken the milestones on their own actually take the milestones on their own, read it on their own, and actually pass for the first time ever. So that's when I first got my passion for tutoring and started loving tutoring.
All right. So you started out, I'm going to assume in a public school system. You may have been at a private school, but you started out
I
in
was a public.
education and you started out in special ed. Um,
Yes.
and so, I'm just going to kind of change the verbiage a little bit.
Hmm.
I'd really just like to think that these are kids that have learning challenges,
Yes.
whether it is, dyslexia or concentration with ADD or ADHD. Um,
Hmm.
just, their brain is wired a little differently, so they learn differently, which doesn't
Yes.
necessarily help in a standard classroom setting. And
That's
so you've gotten certified basically to be able to help these students and adjust how they're taught so that they actually learn the material. Is that a good synopsis?
That definitely is. I like to say, if children can't learn the way we teach, then we need to switch it up and teach the way that they learn. Everyone doesn't learn the same, and unfortunately, in our traditional schools, the school system, they kind of put all the kids in a box, and they want everyone to learn a certain way. However, that doesn't work for certain students, and that's where I come in, because I'm able to provide that one-on-one support. I'm able to come up with the individualized education plan for each student that I work with personally and meet them where they are instead of where we want them to be.
So, what are some other options for these students if the traditional classroom setting is just not, getting them to the level of education they need to be? Because, my experience back in the dark ages um, was that, the teachers just kind of pass these kids along. It's almost like kicking the can down the road, which is not necessarily fair to the students, but I do
Mhm.
understand the huge burden that teachers carry in a classroom. So I am definitely not dissing on teachers here. Our education system is expecting more and more from its teachers. However, they're not necessarily being provided with the support, the resources, and the income that supports that. So I want to be real clear. I am not dissing teachers here because they truly work at a big disadvantage, unfortunately.
They
So,
do.
what are some options in education for our challenged learners?
Yes, ma'am. There are so many options nowadays, which is awesome. You don't have to go to your traditional brick and mortar. You can do it at home. You can have schooling online. You can even have a hybrid school where you have half online and half in the classroom. There's so many different options that you can choose that works well for your child or your student. So we don't have to just throw them out there to the wolves, and they just, try to sink or swim. We can cater to them and do what works best for them.
Now, in a homeschool setting, can you bring in a professional such as yourself to kind of work in that homeschool setting? Because, when I think homeschool, I think, mom's decided to create a curriculum based on whatever the guidelines are, and that,
Yes.
she's the educator.
Right. Sometimes in that aspect, it does happen. However, a lot of times nowadays you have parents that are working, or they may even be working from home and they just can't dedicate that time to their child. So again, that's where I would come in. And yes, they can hire me. You cannot hire a homeschool teacher per se. That is not legally allowed. However, you can hire a tutor to come in to assist with your homeschool working skills, things like that, but not a homeschool teacher.
I have heard a term called micro school.
Mhm.
What is a micro school?
A micro school is just a really small school, kind of a more so a small environment with a small student to teacher ratio. Um, the maximum teacher ratio, student ratio would be 1 to 15. Um, Planning on opening micro school slash homeschool here in August 2024. And trying to keep that ratio to one, no more than 1 to 10 students, one teacher per 10 students. However, with your core subjects such as reading and math, those students will be provided with one-on-one support. So those are your differences in schools and your micro schools and home schools. Micro school is just a smaller school with a smaller environment.
So, being in a smaller environment, does that give administrators and educators a little flexibility in how things are taught? I guess is the best way to phrase that.
Right. Yes, you do have that flexibility in homeschooling or micro school to come up with your own curriculum, the curriculum you think best meets the needs of your child. So that is one of the great things with micro schooling or homeschooling to have that environment.
Okay, so now I'm confused, and it doesn't take much. So, the homeschool, um, your kids are your whoever the educator is, there's a set of guidelines basically. And you mentioned milestones that the children have to be taught and they have to master and pass before they move forward. So let's go to milestones first, and then I'll go back to my next question. So, what are those milestones?
Okay, great question. Some people are not familiar with that. And it depends on what state you live in. So, milestones are standardized tests that students here in Georgia have to start taking starting in the third grade, spring of third grade. Then every year after that, they have to take the milestones. So, even as a homeschool student, you are required by Georgia's homeschool laws to take those milestones, and it can be any type of standardized test, not any. They have about 3 or 4 that the homeschool student can choose from or the parent can choose from. It can be online or it can be paper based. But those students do, and they are required by law to take those standardized tests, whether you're at home or whether you're in a standard school.
Okay, so milestones is a standardized testing. Okay,
That is
now I'm
correct.
clear there. All right, so so in the micro school, and you had mentioned that you're wanting to have one open in August of this year. So is that a brick and mortar building with teachers and a principal, and it's just a school that allows for or limits student teacher ratio? And are you giving the curriculum? I'm assuming, so you get to correct anything that I assume here. So I'm
Okay.
assuming that in the micro school, um, administration comes up with a curriculum or follows whatever the curriculum is. And then the teachers within a grade are given the flexibility in teaching how the student learns and not necessarily vice versa.
That's correct. That is correct. So with the school that I am opening in August, we are our curriculum will be focused primarily on brain-based scientific back curriculum, such as multi-sensory and your Montessori hands-on project-based curriculum, which helps more so with students who are on the spectrum, dyslexia, ADHD, plus your neurotypical students. So it's for everybody. The difference is just more hands-on, more manipulatives going on. A lot of kids need that so they can actually see it instead of just, your black and white paper. So they have those hands-on, they have those manipulatives, and they have that small classroom where they don't get lost. They can kind of ask those questions where they wouldn't normally be able to ask in a big classroom, as well as they're able to foster those personal relationships. Because what I learned is that you definitely have to build a rapport with your students. If you don't have that rapport, they're not really willing to learn from you. They kind of pulling teeth from you. But if you have that rapport, they want to try their best, to meet your guidance and your needs.
So really, it's kind of putting the students in a classroom setting where they are most likely going to achieve success.
They are most definitely going to achieve success because our whole goal is meeting them where they are. It's not, the bar isn't up here,
Mhm.
it is going to eventually come up here. However, the bar is right where they are, and we're going to take those small steps to get them up here while also going back, reviewing, and then building on top of that. So that's with those multisensory strategies and things like that, that's very helpful for that demographic.
Give me an example of a multi-sensory strategy.
Yes, good question. So multisensory strategy. Let's just go to the beginning where students are learning their letters. And so sometimes they can't write yet, or they may not be able to hold the pencil yet. So we'll just get rid of that, but still work on our letters. So they're able to air write their letters. So here's an A, and actually see it, and you're saying it at the same time. So you're using more senses. You're looking at it and you're saying it at the same time. Also, we could implement gel or sand into it to help them write it. Then they'll draw it in the gel or sand, and you actually can feel it. And you can see that letter you wrote as well. So those are two senses that you just used instead of one that we typically use to more to stamp that skill.
Love that. Okay, that's pretty cool. So when we are talking about a micro school, is this? I'm in Florida. You're in Georgia,
Okay.
so I understand there's some differences in how that's done. And of course, my frame of reference is what I went through in Florida. So this is so interesting to me. Um,
Yes.
we have charter schools here. So we have it is part of the school system,
Mhm.
but kind of runs its own course on how the students are taught, how they're educated. They still have to hit all of the requirements of grade level and all that stuff, but
Mhm.
they're more of a charter school, so there's a little autonomy
Mhm.
to how they are governed. Is a micro school similar to that, or how does it differ from a standard public school, if it does at all, or fall into a charter school category?
Gotcha. So it's definitely different from your standard public schools because it's more of a private setting. You come up with your own curriculum, your own guidelines, all of your own rules and schedules. So it's 100% private. Now, the way that is different from a charter school is still under the umbrella of your government, of your state government. So you still have to follow those rules and guidelines of that state. It's not private. the difference between a private school and your typical public school is that, excuse me, your charter school and your typical public school is that a charter school specializes in something specific, whether it be, your STEM classes or drama and arts, different things like that. They specialize in something. That's usually the difference with the charter school and the public school.
So your micro school is going to be a private school.
That is correct. It would be a private entity. We come with our own rules, guidelines, and curriculum. That is
And
correct.
tuition.
You got it. You got it.
I
You
got
got it.
well, I was educated for my first 7 years in a private school, in a Catholic private school. So um, I'm just trying to get it in my head
Yes.
and kind of delineate and hopefully have this make sense to people who tune in.
Yes.
I'm going to turn the corner just real quick because
Okay.
you mentioned that you were an author. So,
Yes,
what did you
ma'am.
write? What's your book?
Yes, so let me correct that. I would say I am a co-author. I co-authored my first book during COVID, and I helped a friend out tell her story. The title of the book is The Day They Took My Son. Uh, and unfortunately, there's a lot of moms out here, a lot of Black moms out here that have lost their sons due to violence and other type of crime. And I just helped that mom get her story out there.
That had to be quite an emotional journey.
Yes, it was. I cried multiple times while writing that book. Towards the end, I had to couldn't even read it. I was done because I had cried so many tears, just trying to make sure I got it out there. And I told the mom's story from her perspective. This story was also featured on the First 48. Um, called Gang Colors was the name of that series, and I think the mom wanted to get her story out because of the perspective they had told. So I was able to assist with that.
That is great. So, where can my viewers find your book?
Yes, you can reach out to me at kornegaytutoring@gmail.com. Also, there's a form you can fill out, kornegaytutoring um, .com, www.kornegaytutoring.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, Kornegay Tutoring. So
You're like me, everything's P Bobo-Miles, P Bobo-Miles. Yes, yes, because
keep
it
it
just
simple.
makes it easy to find you if somebody's looking for
Yes,
you.
you got it.
So let's see, what have I not asked you? Let me take a look at my notes. And it's interesting. A lot of times when I'm doing these interviews, I'm not looking I'm not looking at the camera because you're saying
Hmm.
things and I'm taking notes because I want to make sure that I go back and get everything. So now I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see my notes.
Okay.
Um, we've talked options. When somebody's working in a hybrid setting, and you explained hybrid to me to be a little bit online, a little bit homeschool. Um, what have your educators, whether they're mom, dad, aunt, grandma, whatever, what have been the biggest challenges for that homeschool model?
Yes. Um, a lot of people say the biggest challenges are socialization. But when you think about it, your kids aren't really supposed to go to school to socialize. They're supposed to go to school to learn, you know. And now your extracurricular activities and things like that, that's when they're supposed to actually socialize. So homeschooling, the kids do not lack socialization. There's so many programs and um, games and sports and things like that for them to do. You have dance, you have swim, in addition to all of that. So that is one of the main concerns a lot of people think about when it comes to homeschooling, socialization, but that's not an issue at all. Some students who are homeschooled are socialized even more than your typical that student that's in a traditional school. So that was one of them.
And in the homeschool model, I guess it's similar to what we talked about in micro school, in that you get to set the education up to how the student learns, not necessarily how they're taught. Is that a good way to say
Yeah,
it?
that is exactly not how you want them to learn or how the masses learn. You want to meet them where they are. I take time out to get to know each one of my students, and then I'm able to know or see how they learn best. Some might learn best, with games. Then I have some students that may get stressed out by playing educational games because they want to win all the time. And if they don't win, then they shut down. So you just have to know your students so that you can meet them where they are. The good thing about a hybrid school, again, knowing your child, they can go 2 days a week, they can go 4 days a week. The hybrid school that I will have, you will have options of going Monday and Tuesday or Monday through Thursday. Friday will be an option for field trips, educational field trips. We have so many awesome places to visit here in Atlanta that I always want to put in those educational field trips. Hence my shirt. This is the shirt we wear when we go on our field trips.
I love
So
it.
I'm
I
big on
love that.
educational.
That is, again, before I kind of got connected with you, I was very familiar with homeschool. I was very familiar with charter school. Obviously, I was very familiar with private and public school education, but micro school is not a term that I was familiar with,
Mhm.
nor was it uh, word just flew out of my head. But it wasn't anything I was familiar with, how it was structured, how it worked, how the teachers came in and worked. And I can see, if I can see the advantage of educating when you are meeting the student where they're at, and
Mhm.
you're teaching to how they learn and not teaching to how you teach.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Mhm.
um, thank you so
Very
much
helpful, very helpful.
for
Yes.
taking time out of your day today, to come
Mhm.
in and be here with us today on Perspectives and just kind of share that. So, for any of you who missed it, Miss Kornegay is
Mhm.
looking to open a micro school in Atlanta in August of 2024, and it will be a private school. And my guess is there's going to be a whole lot of buzz around your area when
Yes.
you get this, because not only are there going to be a lot of excited parents that have students that are challenged and how they learn, but you're going to have a whole lot of teachers that are excited to move into a model that um, treats them like professionals. I'm sure
Yes.
pays them like professionals, but allows
Yes.
them to work with students with the flexibility and the
Mhm.
creativity to really do well what they went to school and got those degrees for. So
Exactly.
I'm going to be watching this one.
Yes, man. I'm so excited. I'm so happy to be able to offer it to students, their parents, as well as educators that's looking for, something different than your traditional school with 30 students in each classroom.
Well, that is going to end this particular little interview with Mrs. Kornegay. And I'm going to tell you guys in the Atlanta area, y'all be looking out. I have a feeling
Mhm.
that this is going to really help to make some positive changes in those of you who have children who are going to be part of what microschooling is all about. So I am going to close this as I do normally. And I am going to say that I want you to remember that your day is what you make it. So you choose to make your day a great day.